Have you ever wondered why the game never revealed where the gang's camp was in Blackwater? This mysterious camp is a key piece to understand the whole tragedy that unfolded in the ferry heist. But for some reason, Rockstar decided not to explicitly show the exact location, leaving several doubts in the air. Why did the gang choose to stay so close to the city, risking everything under the authorities' noses? How did Dutch and Micah plan the robbery while keeping an eye on the city without being noticed? And in the end, does this camp location really exist on the game map? Well, despite many not knowing, the secret Blackwater camp actually exists within the game, and Rockstar left subtle clues that only a few more attentive players were able to find. In this video, you will finally have definitive answers to all these questions. We will analyze in detail the clues left in Arthur Morgan's diary, the drawings made by himself, and hidden hints in the game's lore, revealing for the first time the exact location of this camp so important to the story. And if you liked the video's proposal and want to support the channel, consider subscribing because we're just getting started. That being said, let's get started. Before revealing where this mysterious camp is located, I need to give you a quick rundown on what led the van der Linde gang to Blackwater. The plot of Red Dead 2 begins right after the disastrous Blackwater ferry heist, while the van der Linde gang desperately flees towards the icy mountains of Coulter. As a result, we players do not witness directly what happened before the fateful robbery. All we know about these moments comes from small dialogues and mainly from the valuable notes made by Arthur in his personal diary. When we carefully read the first pages of this diary, we find precious details about the gang's difficult journeys until they reach the outskirts of Blackwater. Arthur reports that he had to buy a new diary because the previous one had been destroyed months ago in a fire. After that incident, the gang spent months wandering through the wild regions of the Grizzles Mountains, slowly moving south during a harsh winter. Life was hard but satisfying. Abundant food and the tranquility of isolation provided relatively good days. Dutch had initial plans to buy land somewhere along the way, but for some reason, whether it was insecurity or fear of being pursued, the leader ended up giving up on that idea. Without a defined destination, the gang continued their wanderings. It was precisely during this period that new members joined the group. First of all, Jenny Kirk, a young abandoned girl found on the road who quickly gained sympathy from everyone. Then the infamous Micah Bell, an impulsive and arrogant gunslinger that Dutch met during a scuffle in Crenshaw Hills. After these long months in the wilderness, the gang finally left the wild mountains and temporarily settled on the outskirts of Blackwater. The city, once a simple trading post according to Dutch and Hosea's old memories, had grown alarmingly, quickly turning into a thriving urban center full of opportunities. Arthur didn't like the idea of living so close to a city, but the gang adopted the risky strategy of hiding practically in plain sight in a discreet location, yet close enough to act quickly when needed. While they were around, Arthur occasionally stayed at the Blackwater Hotel, hunting for business opportunities and surveying the local situation. And opportunities were not lacking in that city which, although corrupted, seemed to overflow with money on all sides. At the same time, two major heists began to take shape within the gang. Hosea had discovered a perfect real estate scheme, a scam where they would steal from other criminals, something fun and promising that Arthur fully supported. The two had a special chemistry working together and felt they could make a fortune with this scheme. Meanwhile, Micah and Dutch were excited about another plan, much more dangerous and ambitious, to rob the ferry that would arrive loaded with money destined for local banks. The idea was simple. Dutch, Micah, and other members would rob the ferry and quickly flee west. The next day, Arthur and Hosea would complete their real estate scheme and reunite with the rest of the group, all heading towards the desert. In those days, Dutch was radiant, talking enthusiastically about starting a life in California and at the same time mentioning several other possible places. For the first time, the future seemed bright and promising, but unfortunately, as we all know, things didn't unfold quite like that. Despite the importance of this camp, the game never directly tells us where its exact location was. To find out this answer, we need to carefully analyze the clues left by Arthur himself in his diary. As you have certainly noticed, the cowboy has the habit of drawing a detailed portrait whenever the gang settles in a new location, marking the beginning of each chapter of the story. In Blackwater, it was no different. Arthur left behind two precious drawings. The first drawing does not directly depict the camp, but rather the panoramic view that the group had of the city while they were camped. The second one clearly shows the camp itself, with three people walking among trees near a small cliff, while another one is sitting close to a campfire. These two drawings are crucial for us to discover exactly where the van der Linde gang was hiding before the ferry heist. Going back to the first drawing, we notice on the right one of the most iconic structures of the city, the Blackwater City Hall. Its identification is clear due to the imposing size of the building, as well as its rectangular shape and the characteristic central tower which easily stands out in the horizon. A little further to the right of the image, we find another crucial point, which was probably the main reason why Dutch and Micah decided to set up camp in that strategic region, the Blackwater port. From there, they could monitor the entire route of the ferry using binoculars to find out the exact schedule of the arrival and departure of the money destined for the local banks, greatly facilitating the planning of the heist. Arthur also subtly drew in the lower right corner of the image, the top of a cliff. It may seem like a small and irrelevant detail at first glance, but it was crucial for the definitive discovery of the camp's location. With these elements in hand, the Reddit community conducted a thorough investigation led mainly by users Viva La Vida 555 and Koyami, and thanks to their joint effort, the exact location was finally identified, and it's time to find out what it is. The infamous camp in Blackwater is located at this point on the map, very close to the cabin where Colm O'Driscoll imprisoned Arthur during a mission. As we can see, the place meets all the necessary requirements to be the gang's secret hideout, especially because it is a small lookout that bears a strong resemblance to Horseshoe Overlook. Situated on the water's edge and in a heavily wooded area, this camp offered easy access to food through fishing, while the trees provided good camouflage, protecting the camp from curious eyes coming from the city. But the definitive proof comes when we compare the actual view of the location with the drawing made by Arthur in his journal. It's amazing how everything fits perfectly. The view of the harbor is clearly visible in the central left part. The town hall is right in the upper right corner, and a little further to the right is the cliff detailed by Arthur in the bottom right corner. Furthermore, we can clearly see Flatiron Lake, which bathes the city's shores just like in the drawing. Another interesting evidence can be found when analyzing the trees present. In the area, it is possible to identify a tree stump cut to the ground. It may seem like a small detail, but cutting trees is a common habit of the gang when they settle in a new camp, whether to make space for tents and wagons or to get firewood for the bonfires, which remained lit practically all day long. This same practice can be seen in other gang camps, especially in Horseshoe Overlook, where several cut trees were left behind after the group dispersed. Another important factor that confirms this area as an excellent camping spot is the fact that strangers often appear there, setting up random camps exactly in that specific location. With this, Rockstar itself leaves a subtle clue, indicating that they considered the region a natural and strategic location to set up camp. Putting together all these pieces of evidence, it becomes clear that this is indeed the true secret gang camp in Blackwater, revealed through the traces left by Arthur in his journal and confirmed by the meticulous investigation of the game community. Now that we've finally identified the exact location of the mysterious Blackwater camp, it's worth analyzing some characteristics that it shares with the other camps occupied by the gang throughout the story. The Blackwater camp bears several similarities to Horseshoe Overlook. Both are located on top of a strategic elevation, with easy access to essential resources such as water, abundant wildlife, vegetation for camouflage, and proximity to a small cattle town. As for Clemens Point, the Blackwater camp shares another peculiarity, being close to a large city. In Clemens, they camped near roads, proving that Dutch and Hosea didn't always opt for completely isolated locations, as was the case in Coulter or Beaver Hollow. Another recurring feature is the gang's preparation of the terrain. Whenever they settled in, it was common for them to cut down several trees to make room for tents, wagons, and mainly to obtain firewood for the campfires, which remained lit almost all the time. This practice is evident both at Horseshoe Overlook and Clemens Point. In Blackwater, this feature is more subtle, as we only find one tree cut down on the site. This probably happened due to the gang's short stay in the vicinity of the city. If things hadn't gone so wrong in the ferry robbery, the gang would certainly have stayed longer in the area, cutting down more trees and organizing the terrain better. Another important point is that, just like all the other camps, Blackwater's camp was also surrounded by constant dangers. Each location chosen by the gang came with its own set of threats. Coulter was plagued by the extreme cold of the mountains. Horseshoe Overlook was surrounded by the constant presence of the O'Driscolls, the rival gang of the Vonderlinde. On the other hand, Clemens Point was in the middle of two powerful and dangerous families, the Braithwaites and the Greys, as well as the violent Lemoyne Raiders, who frequently organized ambushes in the region. As for Shady Belle, it almost goes without saying. The camp was so close to St. Denis, and it was so obvious that the Lemoyne Raiders frequently occupied it. Even the O'Driscolls went so far as to order a direct attack there, sending Ciaran without a head as a macabre message. Finally, Beaver Hollow was more isolated from the big cities, but that didn't make it any less dangerous. The Murphy Brood Gang, one of the most brutal and violent in the game, completely dominated that area. With that in mind, we clearly see that the camp in Blackwater worked almost like a prototype for future camps, anticipating characteristics that would appear more clearly in the following locations. Early on, the Van der Linde gang was already showing clear signs of carelessness and arrogance, challenging authorities and hiding practically in plain sight of a big city. They were extremely confident, certain they could steal a fortune from a sophisticated fairy and get away unscathed, even under the watchful eye of the law. And speaking of the fairy's fortune, they did manage to steal it indeed, despite the tragedy the heist ended up becoming. The Van der Linde gang did get their hands on the $150,000 being transported by the vessel. The major issue was precisely escaping with that money after the chaos that took over the town. During the intense shootout, it would be impossible to quickly carry hundreds of dollars in cash and gold bars through the streets, going back to camp and hastily packing everything to flee. That's why Dutch and Hosea made the decision to hide the stolen money right in front of everyone's eyes, in one of the busiest and most public locations in all of Blackwater. The exact hideout is a secret kept by the gang's founders, but after conducting a deep investigation into the game's lore, analyzing every little detail of the narrative, such as newspaper articles and easily missable dialogues, the community finally managed to discover the exact location of the fairy money. If you're curious and want to know exactly where all this fortune is hidden, I strongly recommend you watch this video, where I tell this complete story with all the details. Now the video is showing up on the screen next to the yellow arrow. You will see the secret location of Blackwater's money. And that's it, folks. We'll meet again in a few seconds. A big hug and see you later. Bye.